The reason I had to move out of my flat.
Welcome to Paranormal Nightshift, your home for all things that go bump in the dark and your fan stories told here. Today's story comes from Michelle and is called Seeing is Believing. My dad was a sales manager, and we moved around a lot all throughout the Southeast. We never stayed anywhere too terribly long. All the paranormal activity actually only lasted about 3 weeks. I was about 12 years old. We had moved into this old historic house that was available for rent in the heart of downtown. It was a beautiful house. My mom actually absolutely loved it. It was the first time that we moved and everything just felt like home. Well, it did for the day. That was actually the first time I had my own room. Normally I had to share with my sister. That night we had a wonderful dinner. Dad had to go to work the next morning and leave early. So I went to bed in my own room, and that's when I started to hear it. Something knocking at my window. I was at the second floor, so I knew it couldn't be anything like that. I got out of bed and looked to see if there was a tree. I didn't see a tree branch from the yard, but something just tapping at the window. I knew better than to wake my parents up. My dad had a busy day the next day. I just kind of dealt with it that night. When I woke up that morning, my mom and dad both said, "You look like you didn't sleep. Is everything okay?" It was just a weird night. I heard a lot of tapping and, I don't know, just new house, dealing with sounds. It went on like that for a couple of days. I'd go and lay in bed and the tapping automatically would start at night. I never heard or felt anything weird during the day, but always at night, just tapping. A couple days later, I was laying in bed. The tapping got louder, and then it started to talk. I could hear it say my name. It sounded like somebody was in the room with me, just talking to me. "Hey, can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me?" I assumed it was my sister. This was the first time that she had her own room too. I got up and got out of bed and went to her room, just to be surprised that she was sound asleep. There was no way that she was the one talking to me. I slept in the living room the rest of the day. When my dad got up for work and found me sleeping on the couch, he was kind of upset. "This is the first time you had your own room. Why aren't you in your room?" "Because it's scary. I don't like being up there. Something's talking to me, Dad. Something's weird, and I don't like being up there." Of course, he thought it was an overactive imagination. He told me that I wasn't allowed to sleep in the living room. I had to sleep in my room. It went on like this for days. I'd go and lay in my room, and then I'd hear it. I snuck down to the couch and set an alarm to wake up right before my dad did. I'd go right back into the room, but I continued to hear it talk to me, tapping. I finally broke down and I told my parents, "There's something in my room. Something talks to me. I hear it tapping." My dad, of course, was furious with me. 2 days, I was in trouble. I had to sleep in my room. He grounded me for the weekend, and that was the worst weekend of my life. Now it was talking. It was yelling at me. It was telling me that it got me in trouble. It thought it was funny that I got in trouble. It laughed at me. I tried so hard to get out of my room and sleep on the couch, just get out of my room, but my mom and dad were now keeping tabs on me. My father was furious. "Dad, please don't make me sleep in there. I can't be in there anymore. Look, I'm tired of this over-imagination. I'm tired of all of this. I have to work. This is what we do. And I know you don't like to move, but this is our home and this is where we're going to be. Now, I expect you to stay in your room. Dad, please, you don't understand." Whatever I said must have convinced him, because that night he said, "Fine. You know what? You sleep in there with your mother. I'll sleep in your room, and I'll prove to you once and for all there's nothing in there." I laid in my mother and father's bed that night next to my mom. It was the best night of sleep I had had in weeks, until about 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when we saw it, this figure standing at the doorway. My mother and I were frightened. My mother and I screamed, and then the lights came on, and it was my father. He already had his bags packed. "We have to get out of this house." We grabbed everything we could. My father would never talk about it again. He said that there was something, and we had to leave. That was all he ever said to me. He apologized for not believing me and told us that we couldn't stay in that house. He never talks about it. He never said what he saw or what he heard, but he just told me he was sorry for not believing me.